The email landed in my inbox like a bomb waiting to explode. Notice of legal action. Urgent. My hands trembled as I clicked it open, and suddenly the modern glass walls of my corner office felt like they were closing in on me. I'm Edith. And until this moment, I thought I'd finally put the pieces of my life back together after my divorce from Ricardo. I built this tech company from nothing. Countless sleepless nights, missed family gatherings, and enough coffee to fill an Olympic swimming pool. Now my ex-husband wanted to claim it was partially his. This is absolutely insane, I muttered, grabbing my phone to call Layla. Tell me you're free for lunch, I said when she answered. I need a sanity check. That bad, huh? Layla's voice carried its usual warmth. Luigi's in 20. The restaurant was our usual safe haven, where the red checkered tablecloths and ambient chatter provided perfect cover for intense conversations. Layla was already there, her dark curls bouncing as she waved me over. He's claiming partial ownership, I said, sliding into the booth and tossing the printed email onto the table. Through some obscure clause he says I agreed to during our marriage. Layla's eyes widened as she read. This is ridiculous. Ricardo didn't contribute a single idea to your company. Try telling that to his lawyer. I stabbed at my salad. Remember how charming he was when we first met? All those promises about supporting my dreams? Your brother Jonas warned you. Don't, I cut her off. Jonas is already giving me the I told you so treatment, called this morning to remind me how he never trusted Ricardo's slick businessman act. The restaurant door chimed and I nearly choked on my water. Ricardo walked in with Madison, one of my rising star employees. They were deep in conversation, hadn't noticed us yet. What is he doing with Madison? Layla whispered, ducking slightly. Building his case, probably. I felt sick watching them choose a table across the room. He's always been good at getting people to see things his way. My phone buzzed. Another email. This time from Benson McCormick, Ricardo's lawyer, requesting an urgent meeting to discuss terms. He thinks I'll roll over, I said, gripping my phone so tight my knuckles went white, that I'll be too embarrassed by the divorce to fight back. Layla reached across the table, her hand covering mine. Then he clearly doesn't know you very well. No, I agreed, watching Ricardo charm the waiter with that $1 million smile that once fooled me too. But he's about to learn. The familiar ache of betrayal burned in my chest, but something else was rising too. Determination. Ricardo might have mastered the art of deception, but I had built an empire on truth and innovation, and I wasn't about to let him steal that from me. The law office felt colder than usual as my lawyer spread documents across his mahogany desk. 3 hours of combing through contracts, and my eyes were starting to blur. There's nothing here giving Ricardo any claim to your company, David said, adjusting his reading glasses. But he's crafty. He's building a narrative about intellectual contribution during your marriage. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. Can we meet somewhere private? It's important. 20 minutes later, I found Madison nervously stirring her coffee at a small cafe 2 blocks from the office. Her usually perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. I should have come to you sooner, she said, glancing over her shoulder. Ricardo's been asking questions, lots of questions, about company protocols, development processes, everything. When did this start? 2 months ago. He caught me after work, said he was worried about you, that you weren't coping well with the divorce. Madison's voice cracked. He seemed so sincere. He always does. I fought to keep my voice steady. What exactly did you tell him? Nothing confidential, I swear, but... She pulled out her phone, showing me text messages. He kept pushing for meetings, saying he wanted to help protect the company's future. I thought he really cared. The familiar twist of Ricardo's manipulation made my stomach churn. I'd fallen for the same act. His concerned eyes, the gentle touch on your arm as he convinced you he only wanted what was best. My phone rang. Jonas. Sis, we need to talk, he said when I answered. Remember that investor meeting last spring? The one Ricardo attended? What about it? I've been thinking about how he handled the Q&A session, How he spoke about the company's vision like it was his own. He was showing off, I said. He always did that. No, Edith, he was laying groundwork, building a paper trail of involvement. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Every social appearance, every casual conversation with my employees, he'd been plotting this for months, maybe years. My hands shook as I ended the call. Madison reached across the table, her eyes filled with guilt. "I'll testify," she said firmly. "About the questions, the meetings, everything. It could hurt your career." "He's trying to steal something you built. I won't help him do that." Walking back to the office, I felt simultaneously stronger and more alone than ever. Ricardo had spent years weaving his web, turning my own people into unwitting accomplices. But now the threads were starting to unravel one by one. My phone buzzed again, a message from my mother, Esme. "Coming over tonight? No arguments. You shouldn't be alone right now." For the first time that day, I smiled. Ricardo might have his schemes, but I had something better, people who knew the real truth and weren't afraid to stand by it. Mum arrived with her signature lasagna and a determined look in her eyes. She barely made it through the door before launching into action. "Where are your old business files?" she asked, setting down the food. "The ones from before you met Ricardo?" "Mum, it's almost 9, and that man is trying to steal your life's work." She headed straight for my home office. "I remember every conversation, every event where he tried to take credit for your success. We're finding proof." 3 hours and 2 bottles of wine later, we sat surrounded by papers and old photos. Mom pointed at a photograph from a charity gala 5 years ago. "Look at his face here," she said. "This was right after you announced the Morrison contract. He's not proud of you. He's envious." My phone lit up with a text from Layla. "Emergency. Check your email. Board meeting minutes from last quarter." The attachment showed Thomas, one of my most trusted board members, had met privately with Ricardo 3 times in the past month. "That snake," Mom hissed, reading over my shoulder. "Thomas was at your wedding. He gave that beautiful speech about integrity." "He's always been ambitious," I said, pieces clicking into place. "And Ricardo knows exactly how to exploit that." A knock at the door made us both jump. Jonas stood there looking exhausted. "You're not going to believe what I found," he said, dropping a stack of files on the coffee table. "Remember Ricardo's old consulting firm? I called in some favors. 3 companies, he advised, ended up in ownership disputes, all with similar patterns. Why didn't this come up in our background check before the wedding? Because he settled quietly every time. Made them sign NDAs. Jonas ran his hands through his hair. "One of them agreed to talk to me, off the record." Mum stood up, pacing. "We need to call Angela." "Who's Angela?" I asked. "Ricardo's first wife." I nearly dropped my wine glass. "His what?" "I knew something wasn't right about his story," Mum said. "Did some digging of my own. Found her living in Seattle. Marriage lasted 11 months right before he moved here and met you." My phone buzzed again. An email from Thomas requesting a private meeting tomorrow. "He's making his move," Jonas said, reading the email. "Probably going to try to convince you to settle." "Let him try." I straightened the papers on my desk, a plan forming. "Mom, call Angela. Jonas, get everything you can from those companies, and I'm going to give Thomas exactly what he expects, a woman ready to compromise." "Be careful," Mom warned. "Ricardo's desperate now. That makes him dangerous." "Good," I said, my voice harder than I'd ever heard it, "because he's about to learn just how dangerous I can be too." The pieces were falling into place, but the game was far from over. Tomorrow would change everything. I just had to play my cards right. Layla's apartment became our war room. Jonas paced by the window while I connected my laptop to a recorder, preparing for my upcoming call with Thomas. "Remember," Layla said, adjusting my microphone, "let him think you're scared. Men like him and Ricardo expect women to crumble under pressure." The phone rang exactly at noon. I put it on speaker. "Edith," Thomas's voice crackled through, "I've been thinking about your situation." "I'm sure you have." I kept my voice trembling slightly. This has all been so overwhelming. Ricardo makes some compelling points about his contributions. Perhaps we should discuss a reasonable settlement. Jonas's face reddened, but he stayed silent as planned. What kind of settlement? I asked. He's willing to accept a 40% stake. Very generous, considering... Considering what, Thomas? Considering he never wrote a line of code, never attended a development meeting. Now, Edith, be reasonable. The company grew significantly during your marriage. Because of my work, my team, my vision. I dropped the trembling act. Tell me, how much is he offering you? Silence crackled over the line. I don't know what you're implying, he finally said. 3 private meetings last month. Interesting timing. The call ended abruptly. Jonas let out a low whistle. Got him, Layla said, stopping the recording. Did you hear how his voice changed when you mentioned the meetings? My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. Ricardo just stormed into the office, heading straight for the boardroom. He's panicking, Jonas said, grabbing his coat. I'm going down there. Jonas, wait. But he was already gone. Layla and I huddled over her laptop, watching security footage from the office through Madison's access. Ricardo burst into the boardroom, Thomas close behind. The footage had no audio, but Ricardo's gestures were wild, angry. Thomas kept shaking his head, pointing at his phone. He's scared, Layla whispered. They both are. My phone rang. Jonas. You need to hear this, he said quietly. I could hear Ricardo's voice in the background. She's nothing without me, Ricardo was shouting. I made her what she is. I guided every major decision. By sleeping with her and reading her business papers, Thomas shot back. This is over, Ricardo. I'm not risking my reputation. You already have, old man. We're in this together. The voices faded as Jonas moved away. Got it all recorded, sis. Every word. Relief flooded through me, but it was tinged with sadness. Not for Ricardo, never for him again, but for the years I'd spent doubting myself, letting him take credit for my success. Send me the recording, I said. It's time to end this. Layla squeezed my hand as I hung up. Ready for the next step? I nodded, pulling up my lawyer's number. More than ready. Let's finish what he started. The cafe was quiet when Angela, Ricardo's first wife, walked in. She looked nothing like I'd imagined. Sharp suit, confident stride, eyes that had seen through Ricardo's facade long before I did. I wondered when you'd find me, she said, sliding into the booth. Though I hoped you'd figure him out sooner than I did. How did you know? I asked. About what he really was? The company I worked for back then, he tried the same thing. Claimed he'd been instrumental in my success. She pulled out a folder. I kept everything. Every email, every recorded conversation. Never knew when I'd need it. Layla, sitting beside me, started scanning the documents. Her eyes widened. It's the exact same playbook, she whispered. The private meetings, the manipulation of board members, everything. My phone buzzed. A text from Jonas. Ricardo's lawyer just called. They want to meet. He's getting desperate, Angela said, reading my expression. That's when he's most dangerous and most likely to make mistakes. The cafe door chimed. My cousin Rachel walked in, spotted us and froze. She'd been avoiding family gatherings since the divorce started. Edith, she said, approaching slowly, I need to tell you something. Sit, I said, moving over. Ricardo came to see me last week, asked me to testify about conversations we had at family events, about how he helped shape the company's direction. Her voice cracked. I almost said yes. He can be so convincing. But you didn't, I said. No, because I remembered something Mom told me years ago. At your launch party, Ricardo was telling everyone how he'd helped develop the core technology. But I'd visited you 6 months earlier when you were still coding in your apartment. He wasn't there. He was never there. Angela nodded approvingly. Keep her close, she said to me. Family who can see through his lies. That's rare. My phone lit up again. An email from Thomas. His resignation from the board, effective immediately. One down, Layla said, smiling. More to go, Angela added. Trust me, Ricardo's got backup plans. He always does. Rachel pulled out her phone, showing us a series of texts. He's been reaching out to other family members too, trying to build a narrative about your mental state during the marriage. Classic Ricardo, Angela scoffed. When facts fail, attack character. I stood up, suddenly energized. Then let's give him something real to worry about. Angela, would you be willing to go on record? She smiled, and for the first time, I saw the steel beneath her polished exterior. Honey, I've been waiting years to tell this story. Let's take him down. Layla gathered the documents while Rachel made calls to other family members. The pieces were falling into place, faster now. Ricardo thought he could turn my family against me. Instead, he'd given them the push they needed to stand together. Mom insisted on hosting a family dinner before the court date. We need to present a united front, she said, but I knew she was worried. The house filled with the smell of her stress baking as relatives arrived. The depositions are ready, Jonas announced, setting his briefcase on the kitchen counter. Angela's testimony alone is devastating. Speaking of devastating, Layla said, rushing in through the back door. You won't believe what just landed in my inbox. She pulled up an email on her tablet. Photos of Ricardo at various company events, carefully annotated with dates and contexts, all sent anonymously. Someone's been keeping receipts, Rachel said, peering over my shoulder. The doorbell rang. Madison stood there, clutching a USB drive. I found something, she said, her voice shaking. In the backup servers. Ricardo didn't just ask questions. He tried to access restricted files, multiple times. Jonas plugged in the drive and we huddled around his laptop. Access logs showed repeated attempts from Ricardo's old company credentials. This is attempted corporate espionage, Layla whispered. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Meeting tomorrow, parking garage, level 3, come alone or everything goes public. It's a trap, Mom said immediately. Of course it is, I replied, but it's also an opportunity. Jonas grabbed my arm. Edith, no, we have enough. Let me finish. What if I'm not alone? What if we... A crash from the kitchen cut me off. We rushed in to find Thomas standing there, a broken glass at his feet. Your back door was open, he said quickly. I needed to talk to you. Ricardo, he's planning something. Tomorrow. We know, I said. Parking garage? Thomas nodded. He has documents, fabricated ones, but convincing. He's desperate. Why are you telling us this? Rachel demanded. Because I have a daughter starting her own company, Thomas said quietly. And I can't look her in the eye knowing I helped destroy another woman's dream. Mom stepped forward, glass crunching under her shoes. Start talking, everything you know. For the next hour, Thomas laid out Ricardo's entire plan. The fake documents, the planted stories, the coordinated testimony he'd arranged. He has someone inside your legal team, Thomas finished. That's how he's stayed one step ahead. Layla was already on her phone, typing furiously. I think I know who. Remember that new paralegal? My phone buzzed again. Ricardo. Time's running out. Tomorrow or everything burns. I looked around the kitchen. My family, my friends, even my former enemies, all united against his lies. Let him try, I said, picking up my phone to reply. Tomorrow it is. Mom grabbed my hand. We'll be ready. All of us, Jonas added. Tomorrow would change everything, but this time I wasn't facing it alone. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker. Ricardo sat across the aisle, perfectly groomed as always, that practiced concerned expression on his face. His lawyer, Benson, shuffled papers with exaggerated confidence. Your Honor, Benson began. Mr. Oliver was instrumental in the company's success. During their marriage, objection, my lawyer interrupted. Speculation. Overruled. Continue, but stick to facts. Benson smiled, producing a stack of documents. These emails show Mr. Oliver's deep involvement in company strategy. I gripped the table edge as he read carefully selected excerpts. Out of context, they almost sounded convincing. Almost. Permission to present evidence, Your Honor, my lawyer said, standing. Proceed. Angela walked in, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Ricardo's face went pale. "Please state your name and relationship to the defendant," the judge said. "Angela Williams. I'm Ricardo Oliver's first wife." She looked directly at him. "And this isn't his first attempt at stealing a company." Benson jumped up. "Objection. Irrelevant." "Your Honor," my lawyer countered, "this establishes a pattern of behavior directly relevant to the current case." "I'll allow it. Continue." For the next 30 minutes, Angela methodically detailed Ricardo's previous schemes. With each word, his perfect facade cracked further. Then came Madison's testimony about the server access attempts. Thomas followed, confessing to his role in Ricardo's plan. The judge's expression grew darker with each revelation. "And finally," my lawyer said, "we have this recording from the company boardroom." Ricardo's voice filled the courtroom. "She's nothing without me. I made her what she is." "Your Honor," Benson sputtered, "these recordings were obtained legally in a place of business," my lawyer finished. "And there's more. The evidence mounted, the anonymous photos, the access logs, the testimonies from family members." Ricardo's carefully constructed narrative crumbled with each new revelation. "Mr. Oliver," the judge finally said, "these allegations of attempted corporate espionage are serious. Your Honor, I can explain." "Save it for your criminal defense attorney." The judge turned to me. "Ms. Walker, your company remains solely yours. Furthermore, I'm issuing an immediate restraining order preventing Mr. Oliver from contacting you or any of your employees." Ricardo stood up, his charm replaced by rage. "This is ridiculous. She planned this. She—" "Remove him," the judge ordered. 2 court officers stepped forward. As they led Ricardo out, he locked eyes with me one last time. All I saw was a small, desperate man who'd finally run out of lies. Court is adjourned. Outside, surrounded by my family and friends, the reality hit me. It was over. We'd won. "Ready to go home?" Mom asked, squeezing my hand. I looked at the courthouse steps where Ricardo had just been escorted into a police car. "Yes," I said, "more than ready." The morning sun streamed through my office windows as I cleared the last of Ricardo's photos from my desk drawer. Each one went straight into the shredder, a satisfying rhythm of destruction. A knock at the door made me look up. Madison stood there with Layla and a group of young women I didn't recognize. "Remember how you said you wanted to do something meaningful after all this?" Madison asked. "These are the tech entrepreneurs I told you about. They've all faced similar situations. Some worse," one of them said, stepping forward. "I'm Sarah. Lost my first company to my business partner. Was too scared to fight back." I gestured for them to sit. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, they shared their stories. Companies stolen, ideas appropriated, confidence shattered. Each story fueled something new inside me. Not anger this time, but purpose. "We need to create a network," I said, grabbing my laptop. "Legal resources, emotional support, business mentoring. Already started." Layla grinned, pulling up a website. "Called it Reclaim. Just waiting for our first executive director." My phone buzzed. A news alert. Ricardo's face filled the screen. "Tech executive faces criminal charges in corporate espionage case." "Good," Sarah said firmly. "Let them all see what happens when you fight back." A text from Mom popped up. "Dinner tonight. The whole family's coming. No excuses." "Speaking of family," Madison said, "your brother's downstairs with Angela. They're helping set up the new security protocols." I smiled, remembering how Jonas had transformed from skeptic to strongest ally. How Mom's lasagna-fueled strategy sessions had brought us closer than ever. "You know," Layla said, reading my expression, "Ricardo thought he could isolate you. Instead, he gave you an army." Another knock, Rachel this time carrying a stack of papers. "First draft of the mentorship program guidelines. Ready when you are." Looking around my office at these women, each with their own battle scars and victories, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this whole nightmare began. Hope. "Let's get to work," I said, clearing my conference table. We have companies to save and lies to expose. Sarah pulled out her phone. I know 3 more women who need to be here. Bring them, I said. Bring them all. The room filled with energy as laptops opened and ideas flowed. Ricardo had tried to write me out of my own story, but he'd only succeeded in helping me start a new chapter, one where women like us didn't have to fight alone. Outside my window, the city stretched toward the horizon, full of possibilities and battles yet to be won. But this time we were ready. This time, we had each other. So, I asked, looking at the determined faces around me, who's next?